show.
You know, I just wake up. I wake up every morning with this excitement in my belly, in my spirit, that if I'm up, I have another day to be great. Welcome back to the show. You know, it's no excuses, the Ray Lewis Show, but it's everyday greatness. It's finding people who's doing incredible, incredible things. If this is your first time to the show, buckle up. Buckle up, because there's gonna be some nuggets dropped today. And if you continually come back, I'm excited because you know what's in store. So here we go. I am so excited about today's guest. And one of the reasons why, when I was in college, this show kind of kicked off, and I was like, man, what is going on? And I started watching this show, and then I started watching this one guy who kept catching my eye. I was like, whoa, like he's a tough guy. He keeps everybody in order. And then I just kept following the show. And this next guest, I mean, he's done so much in his earlier career from 1994 to 2007. I mean, he's a former cop. He's a Marine. He's been everywhere. He's done everything. And without further ado, I want to call on my good friend, Steve Wilkos. Steve, what is going on, my friend? How are you? And what is going on in life for you, my man?
You know, things are really good for me. You know, with this pandemic, a lot of people, you know, really struggling. And with my show, it really hasn't taken a hit. Obviously, the rules that we had to produce our show so differently because of the pandemic. We can only bring guests in from a 300-mile radius, which really limits us as far as guests go. We have no audience, you know, which a lot of TV shows are doing. So that part's, you know, so I feel fortunate that, you know, the pandemic, so many people lose their jobs and struggling and losing their livelihood. And I'm very fortunate. It really hasn't affected me.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for your service, man of the Marines, right? It gets no better. So let's jump back for a minute. 1994, you start this thing with Jerry Springer, and that stint goes into 2007. Tell me about that ride, and then what was the transition? Did you want to transition from Jerry to then go into the Steve Wilkos Show? How did that happen?
Well, I mean, real quickly, you know, I grew up in Chicago. My father was a paratrooper in the Korean War. He was a Chicago police officer for 30 years. So my dad, like, I looked up to my dad. My dad was my hero. And, you know, I was involved in sports. I played baseball through high school, but I was, you know, I hung out with the wrong guys and not, I shouldn't say that the wrong guys. They were good friends of mine, but they kind of got me off focus about what I really wanted to accomplish. Like, you know, I got caught up in some wrong things like drinking and girls and all that stuff. And I got academically ineligible to play baseball. And so after high school, I didn't have good grades. I wasn't going to college, and we didn't have money to go to college. But so I joined the Marines like my dad. My dad's like, be a military guy. Then when I did 6 years in the Marines, I got out, I became a police officer. And I thought the next 30 years of my life are set, right? Like, I'm going to do 30 years, get my pension, and retire. Well, in 1994, my buddy was walking out of the police station at 1 o'clock in the morning. We're done with our shift. And he said, hey, do you want to work a side job tomorrow? And, you know, policemen always work side jobs and make extra money. So I said, yeah. I go, what is it? And he's like, the Jerry Springer Show. I didn't even know, I never heard of Jerry Springer, didn't know what he was, who he was. So I said, sure. And it was supposed to be for one day. So I went the day, we did the show. I'm not even really, it was some kind of crazy show, but one day, and we wore a suit tie, I had hair back then. And then the next week they called me back, hey, we got this other show, do you want to do it? And I said, yeah. Well, the show was kind of boring when I first started there. It was like all these serious topics, and it wasn't fun. It was really boring. Then they went to doing much younger stories where young people fighting about who they slept with and this and that. And they would start fighting. And that's when I would jump up on stage.
Yeah.
And so then they said, okay, that's the direction where the show's going. So I ended up they said, we want you here full time. I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world, right? Now I got a great, like, full-time, part-time job. So probably in 1996, we were doing Springer Break at Daytona Beach, and the executive producer said to me, hey, why don't you shave your head? Because I was losing my hair, but I had a real tight Marine Corps haircut still. He said, just shave your head. You're going to really, stand out on the show. I said, I didn't want to do it, but I said, yeah, okay. So I went to the barbershop, shaved my head. And it was crazy, the difference of just shaving your head. Like, I started, and this was before the internet. So I actually got fan mail, right? Like letters. And it just, my popularity took off. And so, like, over the years, my role on the Springer Show just incrementally increasing. And then we started doing segments called Steve to the Rescue. And people would write into the show and they're like, I like that guy. He seems like he's a good guy. Right. Can he help me? So I'd actually go to people's houses all across the country and help them. And we'd film it, and we called it Steve to the Rescue. So I was living the life, man, because Jerry, like you say, you were in college watching the show, and he was the biggest star in the world. The show was crazy popular. People forget how nuts it was. And so I was I was making, a couple $100,000 part-time. So it was way more than my police salary. So I was happy. And I said, man, I'm going to write this out as long as it goes. And then I'll go back to being a cop, and I'll have some money saved up. Well, I met my wife on the show. She was a producer. We got married. And then really what broke it for me to getting my own show, it was like 2005. Jerry went on Dancing with the Stars, and they thought he'd be the first one voted off when he went on. And they came to me and said, when Jerry's gone, you're going to host the show. I said, I don't know how to host. Oh, you'll be fine. Just do it. He'll be the first one voted off. You'll do it for a week, and then he'll be back. Well, then Jerry ended up doing really well. I don't know if he danced well. I never watched it, but I guess he was pretty popular on the show. And he spent like 6 weeks on the show. So we couldn't shut the production of the show down. So I ended up taping 6 weeks of shows. When those shows aired, the ratings went up. So the next year, and they had to pay me like a little extra money when I hosted the show. Okay. So now Jerry the next year goes, hey, Steve, will you tape Monday shows? Because he's still going to get paid. I get paid a little, and he gets a day off. I'm like, yeah. Well, so in January 2007, I had small kids. My kids were like 4 and 2. My wife was up in bed, and I'm watching All in the Family at like 11:30 at night. And I got like a vodka tonic, and I'm sitting there. And my phone rings, and it's some guy on the phone. He's like, yeah, this is so-and-so from NBC. We're giving you your own show. And at first, I'm like, who the hell is this? Is one of my buddies calling me or something, And he's like, nah, we're going to launch a show. And so I went up, I told my wife, and she's like, how much you been drinking? And I'm like, so, and so here I am, terrified, right? Because I'm a cop. Why are they giving me a TV show? Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know what we're going to do. So it literally was terrifying. Like I had to walk across, a line between the Empire State Building and, the Twin Towers. I just didn't know what to do. So, but I was very fortunate that I married a woman that probably the greatest producer in TV. And she really, she wasn't the executive producer the first year, but she really had a lot of input. And then when the old executive producer was fired, they put my wife in charge, and we've just been working together since. And she said, listen, you're not a celebrity, you're a cop, and that's what we're going to do the show. We're going to base the show around you being a cop. And so that made it easy for me, because that's what I knew how to do. I couldn't be anything else. And, I don't ever think to myself, I'm not talented, I'm not the smartest guy, but I like to work, and I'll try my hardest. But, and I thought I was a good police officer. So that was easy to translate from the streets to the stage. And if anybody watches my show, they know we deal with a lot of topics that policemen deal with. So, you know, now 14 years later, it's still to be on TV, because when they announced my show and I had to do like the big media tour announcing the show, and we're going out in LA, people were laughing in my face. They're like, you're not going to last 13 weeks, because that's when they bought shows.
Yeah.
And people are like, you are never going to make it. You're Jerry Springer's bodyguard. And I'm signed through 15 years, so we've done something right.
Absolutely, man. You know what? That's so funny, because if you listen to your story, right, it's almost where I'm headed a little later. But if you listen to your story, you said I was with the wrong crowds, whatever. But then you said a friend just asked me to do something, right? A friend just asked me to do a gig, right? And then you go from there. And because you happily accepted that, another friend comes up and say, hey, man, would you want to do my show? Right? So sometimes it's just being in the right place at the right time. Right. And so I guess growing up in Chicago, now you have the Steve Wilkos show. You've done the Jerry Springer show. You've been a huge sports fan for a while, cop, Marine. You say you're a Bears fan. Catch me up now. What is the temperature from your perspective, right? We're in a crazy time. We're in a crazy time, Steve. We've seen things that we've never seen, right? From the pandemic to injustice, just all type of crazy stuff. But where's the peace? How do Steve and your show and everything that you believe in, how do you give us some sort of resolve, or give some people some sort of resolve, or some sort of solutions on how to push forward, and how to not make those decisions of not necessarily being around the wrong people, but letting them take you in the wrong places?
Yeah. That's why I wanted to correct myself, because my friends were good guys, but you know, we were meatheads, young guys in Chicago, and you know, we like to fight and drink and, you know, do stuff that young testosterone-filled boys did.
Love to do.
Yeah. But there was other guys that, you know, from my neighborhood that were, you know, maybe nerdy, or the, you know, whatever you want to call them, they were book smart. And if I would have spent a little more time with them, I don't regret how my life turned out, but things could have been different if I, you know, applied myself in a little better manner. But I had two parents that worked all the time that, like, you know, I'm fortunate with my schedule. I'm really, like, I have a son, he's 15 going on 16, he plays baseball. He's a great player, and I'm not going to let anything happen to him like happened to me. Like, you're going to be focused. Right. But as far as like what you were saying, like, we're going through these crazy times, and as much as I love being on the Jerry Springer show, and I was on it for 14 seasons, the thing I hated, I really did hate this, when people would see me in the airport or wherever, like I'd be out public, like, man, where do you find that trash? What trailer park? And I'm like, they're not trash. They're people. And they're involved in a crazy story, and they're not as fortunate as you with education and living in a, you know, a lot of these people are from very rural areas where there wasn't things going on. And so that bothered me. Like, how do you call anybody trash? How do you feel so good about yourself that you look down at other people? I never understood that. But I wasn't one to, like, they're fans of the show, so I wasn't going to be like, hey, who the hell are you? So, but what I like about my show is that when I'm out in public and somebody sees me, they're like, hey, Steve, we really love what you do. And, you know, we try to send a positive message, and it's not like the most complicated. We all know what's right and wrong, right? And a lot of the biggest cause of our show is domestic violence victims, and getting them out of those situations, or making a offender know what he's doing and maybe change his ways. But really, it's getting, and most of the time it is women, to empower them to stand up, to say, hey, get away from this guy. We also expose people that have done, you know, crimes against children. You know, over the course of years, we've sent several people, because of appearing on a show, they've gone to jail. Now, that's not the point of the show, but I like to say people see that there's a positive message, that it's not, as they say, trash TV. I get letters from people that have been on the show, or people that watch the show and say, hey, I was involved in that same situation. I love what you say. you've got me out of that, and you've empowered me. You've gave me the strength to leave this situation. So, like I said, it's a totally different show than what the Jerry Springer show was. And I loved being on the Jerry Springer show. I had the time of my life. But I love doing my show, and I love what we're doing for people.
Right. Absolutely. And you know what? That's what's interesting, because even when we was talking, I was like, man, because of course I transition and I've watched a number of your shows. I'm like, wow, it's really different. And you're right, it's really different. And to that point, right? I had my mom on a few weeks ago, right? And my mom went through, just crazy side of domestic violence. So not only do I appreciate you standing up for that, because one of the biggest things that came out of that's been happening in this pandemic has been a big spike in domestic violence, right? And when you see women, have to suffer these things, and you see kids have to go through these things, I applaud you for everything that you do on your show, bringing it to the forefront, right? And fighting for these issues, man. And so that's why, Steve, I love doing these, because people will never know, right, that's half of the motivation of why you do your show, right? They just will never, unless they're just totally into Steve Wilkos. And just like I tell people all the time, you got to know my backstory. If you don't know my backstory, it's going to be impossible for you to understand who I am or where I'm headed. And that's why for me, man, life is all about solution-based. Like every day, right? When we talk about everyday greatness, right? It's like I'm listening to your story, and I'm a sponge, but to listen to the transitions of your story and how many times you had to transition. And then in the midst of transitioning, you met your partner, right? So it's interesting on how we transition in all these different places. And regardless of religion, God places you in certain people's lives that some will be in there for a reason, season, and a lifetime, and that's what drives me to continually come back and do this show, because everybody has a message. Yeah. Everybody has a message, but you got to get to the underlying, area of what is that message, man. So I'm telling you, your message is really amazing. And thank you for all that you do, because it's just really good. Chicago Bears football. You've been a fan since 1973, since you was 9 years old. Are the Bears your diehard football fan? Are the Bears your diehard team?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm Chicago. I'm diehard Cubs fan, Bears fan, Bulls fan. I'm not a big hockey fan, but obviously I'm a Hawks fan. But those are my three: basketball, baseball, football. Baseball number one, football number two, basketball number three. So growing up in Chicago, you never had winning teams until the Bears in '85, but we always had Dick Butkus, we had Walter Payton. We always had players, Ernie Banks and Billy Williams and all those, Fergie Jenkins. So even though we didn't have great teams that won anything, we always had players that were iconic that you could still enjoy and be fans of. But then for me, it really was 1985 where the Bears won the Super Bowl. And it was one of those things, like after 1984 and they lost in the playoffs, it was a great feeling, because you just knew going into 1985 they were going to win it all. Like there was nothing that was going to stop them, and it was just such an enjoyable year. And then over the years, when I got into TV, I got to meet a lot of those guys, and it was really cool. But now being a Bears fan, it's been tough, because I really don't want to go on my high horse and just complain about things, but
it's okay, Steve. You're a fan. It's okay.
But I do think the McCaskey family, and listen, I've met them all, because my brother became good friends with one of the owners, and we spent some time with the McCaskies, and I was even in the owner's box. I don't want to be too critical, but my thing with the Bears is, there's owners that are really sportsmen and they want to win. Let's just throw it out there, Jerry Jones or Robert Kraft. The Bears, there's 100 McCaskies, and they're all on the payroll. So it's more about making money to keep the family supported than it is to put a winning organization. Ted Phillips is the president of the Bears, and he stinks. He's been in his job for 20 years. He doesn't make any right decisions, and this guy keeps his job. Where else in the private sector you could stink at your job and keep it. I mean, if I didn't get any ratings and I stunk and I came to work and I didn't do a good job, I'd be fired within a year. This guy's had his job for 20 years.
So you are a true Chicago fan. I'll tell you that. I've heard these cries. I've heard these cries many a time. But okay, so let's go past Chicago. Super Bowl's coming up. Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback to ever do it. And there's a young kid named Patrick Mahomes. Steve Wilkos. Who do you like in this game, and why do you like who you pick in this?
Like you said, Tom Brady, it's not up for debate, greatest quarterback ever. And like when anybody tries to even argue it, like, are you an idiot? This guy's led 10 teams to the Super Bowl. So, and then, and everybody, it's Bill Belichick. Well, guess what? Maybe it wasn't Bill Belichick. But I like the Kansas City Chiefs because as great as Tom Brady is, I've never seen a guy like Pat Mahomes. Never. I mean, the guy is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
His throws, when he does that underarm and that sidearm action.
Sidearm.
Like, I've never seen anybody make those throws. And the great thing about Pat Mahomes, and he's as talented as they come. And by the way, the Bears passed on him to take Mitch Trubisky. And we passed on to Deshaun Watson also. And we traded up to get Mitch. So there's the Bears for you. But anyways, Pat Mahomes also, he's got Travis Kelce and Hill and all these great weapons. And as great and talented as the Buccaneers, there's no way in the world I see the Chiefs losing this game.
Wow. There's an argument from both sides. I mean,
of course.
Yeah. But I totally get where you're going with it. I'm telling you, his mother said it's not Pat, it's Patrick. So I just want to make sure.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
I just want to make sure Mama okay. Yeah. But I like your pick, man. If there was one thing from your experience in life that made you realize or become the person that you are, what's 3 things that you changed in your life that someone can change in their life to find a better future?
Okay. Number 1, recently over the last few years, even with all my success, I struggled with depression and anxiety, and I used alcohol to medicate myself and to just basically zone out, right? And a couple of years ago, I got a DUI, and it was devastating. It was embarrassing to my mother and father. My father never, was a cop, never been in trouble, and my father was my idol. And it was so embarrassing to be arrested after, all these years of trying to do good and keep my nose clean. And then here I am failing myself, my community, my family by, getting behind the wheel drunk. And so after that, I really said, I'm going to jeopardize everything I worked hard for and, put tension in my family and everything else. So after that accident, I just stopped drinking, number 1. And not that I preach to everybody else to say you should stop drinking, but I just say you got to be careful because it's something that's it's legal, and there's everywhere you go. When you go to a football game, when you go out to dinner, everybody drinks, and it's an easy slope to slide down alcohol. Where like people say, this and that. And yeah, I mean, I fell in that trap. I fell in the trap of alcohol, but I didn't go to AA. I didn't do anything. I just said, hey, man, this is a negative thing in my life. And if I keep doing it, I'm going to destroy everything. So I stopped drinking, and I haven't touched a drop. And actually, I feel my life is 100 times better because I wake up every morning, I work out, I play golf, I do a lot of things that when I would drink, I didn't wake up in the morning, I don't feel good, I'm going to sleep all day. And it just wasn't good. So that's the biggest change I made in my life, probably since I've been an adult. And honestly, if I could go back in time, I would never have started drinking. Now, I had some of the best times of my life drinking. I had a lot of fun drinking, but it's a drug, and because it's so legal, and again, where it's everywhere, nobody thinks, even when you're getting drunk, that there's nothing wrong with it. But it causes a lot of problems, and that was a big change I made. So that's number one. Number two, when people always say you're really lucky because you got a TV show and you did this and you did that, and I always tell people, luck didn't find me laying on the couch watching TV. I hustled all the time. I worked all these jobs, side jobs. I worked constantly 24 hours. So when that guy, my friend, asked me as I was walking out of the police station, hey, do you want to work a side job? He knew I was going to say yes. And just recently, we were down in Puerto Rico for Christmas, and we're staying at this beautiful place. And, palm trees right on the beach. I looked at my wife, I go, remember that moment when I walked out of the police station at 1 o'clock in the morning? If I was one of those guys that said, nah, I want to sleep in, I don't want to work tomorrow, I got plans. I go, my life changed completely. My wife, my kids, my career, where I live, everything. If I would have walked out that door maybe 5 minutes earlier or 2 minutes earlier, my life would be totally different. And but the point is, I tell everybody, take every opportunity you can. Don't waste time, especially when you're younger, because that's when things happen. That's when there's opportunities, and you got to make the most of it. And you don't know what opportunity is going to lead to bigger opportunities. So take them all. That's what I tell everybody.
Look, my grandfather gave me a fishing analogy years ago, and we went fishing, to your point about opportunities. And I had one pole out, and it's this big lake, Kissimmee Lake. And we're sitting out on this lake, and the whole family is waiting for us to come back home to get food, to have fish. And I'm out there with one pole. And he asked me, he says, well, who you fishing for? I said, we're going to fish for everybody. We're going to bring fish back for everybody. He said, how you going to feed everybody with one pole? And I said, what do you mean? He said, look how big that lake is. See how big that lake is? He says, just like the world. He says, opportunities everywhere, but you have to put the certain foods and certain seeds in certain places to catch a little fish, to catch a big fish, to catch a huge fish. And I'm like saying to myself, I said, really? And Steve, honestly, to your point, I've always been prepared for the opportunity.
Right.
Seriously. That's the one thing that I'm telling you I take away where our stories line up, is because the same door you walked out of when somebody said, give me a job, and hey, I got a gig for you, it's the same door I walked out of that locker room when the coach looked at me and said, hey, son, you want to play football? Then I was like, oh, yeah, I'm ready for that, right? I've been doing push-ups and sit-ups every night. So I am definitely ready for that. Man, listen, what excites me about talking to people like yourself is that you're so vulnerable with who you are and where you've come from. But more importantly, like some people, that's why I love doing this show, right? Because a lot of people are, but they're afraid of that. And for you to expose, right, depression and the things that you was going through and the crutch, right? Because a lot of people use, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whatever it is, they use it as a crutch. But when you're able to remove that crutch and then still find the better you, now you're getting up, you're working out every day, right? I do it every day of my life, man. So listen, I'm telling you, continued success, but your story is necessary, because all of the things that you've seen, all of the things that you've been through, all of the things that you're helping now, the solution in our world. And honestly, Steve, for me, that's why I love doing this show. That's why I love the back end of my teams, because we really think about who we want on the show. And your message that I didn't know, because I did know a lot, but I didn't know it was so focused on domestic violence. I just didn't know that, that was a passion of yours, man, because it's something that's dear to my heart because of what my mother endured. So my friend, I thank you so much, man. You're amazing. From afar, I knew you was amazing. 1994, I was in college when the show started. So, being broke, you had nothing else to do but watch. is come home after practice and like, Jerry Springer, I gotta go watch Jerry Springer. Something's crazy is gonna happen on Jerry Springer today. So man, me and my roommates used to just come and pile in. And so funny because you're right. Whoever gave you the advice to cut your hair, he was right because it made you stick out like no other, man. Seriously, it really did. Hey, my friend, listen, I'm gonna write I'm writing all everybody picks down who's picking, and you picked the Kansas City Chiefs, and continued success, my friend. You were a blessing, man, and I'm really excited that I got you on the show because it's just good to know where you came from with Jerry Springer and now your Steve Wilkos show, and all of the things that I heard growing up. Oh, you're too small. You can't do this. And you heard the same things. Oh, your show won't last. You won't be around this and that. But you kept pushing, right? And it's never about luck, right? It's about luck favors the prepared, right? And it seems like you've always been a man that was prepared.
Well, man, I just want to say that I've followed your career, obviously, and I think your story is incredible, also, and the things you had to overcome and make changes. So, I have a lot of respect for you, also. I really do, and you just seem like a very positive guy. You're paying it forward, and I really do believe that if more athletes were like you, because again, it's one of those things where you get wrapped up in your own life, things are going good, and you're just so centered on yourself, and you're not looking out at everybody else, and it happens, and I understand how it happens, but it's nice that there's athletes like you who had just incredible success, but you're also looking out for your fellow man, and to me, that's what it's all about.
That's it, man. Steve, bless you, man. You take care of yourself, all right? And I'll be paying attention to the Steve Wilkos show now.
Thanks a lot, man. It's really great.
More, my friend. Take care.
Take care.
Absolutely.
You too.
How amazing, right? Every day you run into different people and you never know what will make your paths cross. Steve said something that was really interesting, right? Checking in. Steve said something that was really interesting, right? That a lot of us find ourselves in this place that sometimes we're dealing with things, right? And we don't know how to deal with them. But honestly, right, when you talk about, I'm lucky. Well, luck actually favors the prepared. And I tell you, what's been going on is watching the NFC and AFC championships of the National Football League and watching all of these trade rumors and where Deshaun Watson is going to end and where what Phillip Rivers just retired and now Matthew Stafford, where is he going? It's so interesting because I finished my race in one city, but it's interesting to watch the dynamic of the championship games, the offseason acquisitions and all these different things, because we had our 20th year anniversary last night, the Ravens did. And just to see all of the faces of all of the guys from that 20-year anniversary that came together for one goal, to win a Super Bowl. And 20 years later, now we expressed last night that I think we had 5 or 6 that's no longer with us, right, from that team. But all of the men and the coaches that was on that call, if you could have seen the light in their eyes, if you could have seen the energy that we had last night, just enjoying every second of each other. And I tell young kids this all the time. I don't care at what level, if you ever come together one time in any business to accomplish something big that the world said you can't do, you will never forget the people you made that statement with. And last night for me, I'm telling you, I've just been in my life, I've been in this reflection mode of reflecting. Yeah, a lot of people like to go so fast, and the world says, keep going fast, keep going fast, keep going fast. But honestly, I believe this pandemic is teaching us to slow down. It's teaching us to really remember. I remember Rod Woodson. Me and him was on the phone last night and listening to him tell the story when he actually saw me start to come into or become the leader that I am. Coming from Rod Woodson, that's big for me. That's huge for me because he's a childhood hero. He's the greatest. He's one of the greatest athletes of all time, but to me, he's one of the greatest brothers of all time. But this week, I think let's go back to a reflection mode. We're going to be really quick, right? Because I want to drop something off to you. I don't know if I'm going to give up my Super Bowl pick just yet because I got a lot of things still on my mind. I'm going back and forth. On the show, me and Phil are tied for first place. The tiebreaker comes up in the Super Bowl. I don't know what to do. But I tell you what the thoughts are, right? I want you to really think about this question. Stop where you are in life and ask yourself, where are you headed? Not how much money you can make, not what job you have, but where are you headed? After you answer that, who's following you? Right? Listen to this. You can't change your destination overnight. Nobody can change the destination overnight, but you can first change your direction. That's where, if you listen to Steve, one of the things, it wasn't bad people he was hanging around. It was the direction that they was taking him in. When you start to come away from your direction, watch this. This is what happens in your life. You start chasing your passion. And then when you chase your passion, I guarantee you inside of your passion, you will find your purpose. That's why watch this. That's why purpose is connected to the spirit. You can call it what you want to call it, but purpose is connected to your spirit. That's why your passion exudes. I said this earlier, the pandemic is giving us a chance to reinvent ourselves. Choose who you want to be. And more importantly, instead of just choosing who you want to be, choose whose message you're going to follow and choose whose message you're not going to follow. Because one of the things that we've had time to do in this pandemic is follow a lot of people. And a lot of people are saying a lot of things that leads a lot of people to some really dark places. A lot of people in music and television shows, and I watch it from all different levels. And I asked my teammates last night, while we was on the show last night, they was talking, and a couple of guys, they just kept saying how my leadership helped change their life, helped shape their life. And in the midst of this pandemic, we're gonna walk ourselves through it. I asked you guys last week, try something new. And I read not all of them, I won't tell that lie, but I read so many of your responses on the things that you're trying new. People are just trying to eat better. People are just trying to read books. People are just trying to work out better. People are just trying to pick the right crowds. That every day you have to get up and sharpen yourself before you can sharpen someone else, unless you just don't care what happens when they hear or see your message. My mother taught me something, and she said something a long time ago. She said, Junior, let me tell you something about the tongue. It's fast and it's swift. But she said, life and death is found in that same little pink thing you got in your mouth. And you don't understand it until you make a comment and see how it affects people. I'm always giving out challenges. Why? Because I challenge myself every day. I really do. And I challenged you last week to try something new. I want to challenge you this week. I want you to write down where you're headed. Who's following you? And what's your message? Remember this. Most of the things that you hear people say, hear me, most of the things that you hear people say is for them and them only. I want you to start listening carefully. See, it's one thing to hear, but you must listen to where somebody is taking you. And when you start writing down your messages to where you're headed, I want you to really think about who will follow you based on where you're heading. If you're the head of your household, kids are always paying attention to what the daddy is doing. Kids are always paying attention to what the mother is doing. Kids are always paying attention to what you're listening to and what's on your mind and what's in your thoughts. And I'm telling you, if you watch, Steve said something, right? That he was dealing with depression and he was really in a low place. And what he went to, something easy, right? Something that's available at almost every liquor store, every grocery store, alcohol. And every day that was his crutch to get over depression. Not prayer, not faith, not working out. It was something else. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes it can be in the form of a bottle. It can be in the form of a body. It can be in the form of music. It could be in the form of a television. But something's going to shape you. Something's going to excite you. And something's going to lead you down a lot of dark roads. Let's find out what that is. And let's write down where you're headed this week. I love the comments. I'm serious. I cannot get through them all because they're so good. And I'm working with people to try to figure out how do we answer all of these questions, because I want to answer everybody's question, because everybody's question is relevant to right now. Look, I'm a roundup, right? And I want you to remember this. The person who's willing to go first, listen to me carefully. That's not the person that you should follow. It's the person that takes his time to understand his message and never want to be first. Denzel said something years ago about the media. He says the problem with the media is it's not that they report what's right. They just want to report who's first. Before your message goes out, pray on it, meditate on it, really think about it. Before you send out a tweet, before you send out a text or Instagram, whatever, think about what you're doing. From a young woman's perspective, think about what you're doing. If you have kids and everything that they see that you're doing, and one day, because none of this stuff disappears. And one day, they say, Mama, that's you. So we're in a different time. Steve said something when he was acting crazy. We didn't have internet like that. I tell my kids all the time, you guys are at a disadvantage. Even what I got away with, it ain't on the internet. it's like no, they couldn't record, the parties and all those things on the internet. But now everything is captured. And that's why the question is simple. What's your message? Who you leading? Where you headed? Something's happening. There's a shift, and we all feel it. We all feel it. We have different conversations, and a lot of people are struggling through this pandemic. A lot of people is going through some crazy things, and that's why I say let's try new things. But one thing that you have control over is you and the human will. So today, if you haven't picked up your Bible in a while, pick up your Bible. If you haven't worked out in a while, it's okay to take one step and put the second one behind it. Don't drive yourself crazy trying to do all these CrossFit stuffs and hurting your back and tearing up your knees and all this stuff. Don't go through all that, because every person has a different program for them. I met some interesting people this week. I met some interesting doctors and I just got totally different perspectives And when you sit down and listen to people in different fields that just have different perspectives about life, you realize I don't know as much as I thought I knew. Definitely in certain fields. That's why the question still remains, where are you headed? I'll give you an example if it's hard for you, and I'll leave you with this. Where am I headed? I ask the Lord for greater wisdom. I ask him not to let me grow weary of the evil that's surrounding our world right now. I ask him to keep me away from any distractions or detours, because I want to be clear where I'm headed. And when I'm done, it doesn't matter, right, about what the naysayers said. Write your mission, write the vision. And the good book says, make it plain. Takeaways. Whew. Lucky is one thing, prepared is another. Mastery is something that any person can be proud of. But the saddest thing in the world is wasted talent. And I tell you, if you don't do nothing else, become the master of your own fate. Become the master of your destiny. Become the master of your health. And who are you? I tell somebody this, and I'm gonna leave you guys with this. Stop going to the doctors and letting the doctors have to tell you what your blood type is. You find out yourself. Know what you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating. Because that's what this pandemic is. It attacks the system. It attacks the body. So let's take care of the body, but let's master what taking care of the body feels like. So I tell people all the time, they're like, man, I would love to work out with you, this young kid. I love him to death. Oh my gosh, I won't call his name. But his body, he looks amazing. And I'm really excited to work out with him. I really am. Right? He's 28 years old and he looks like just a Greek god, right? And I'm like, boy, I love your body, man. You look good. He was like, be careful to work out with me. And I'm saying, be careful to wake up a sleeping giant. The last thing you want to do is when a giant is sleeping, let me sleep. Because see, son, you're going to go in the weight room and you're going to try not to get tired. I'm going in the weight room to get tired because that's when I find the best me. I'm asking you this week, slow down and ask yourself, where are you headed? Who's following you? And become the master of you. Once again, Everyday Greatness, the Ray Lewis Show. Everyday greatness is available, but you gotta switch out. You gotta chase something. Stop thinking that it's gonna come in talent. Talent only opens doors. Mastery keeps them closed. God bless you.